The monsoon had been relentless. Thunder cracked overhead as rain lashed the jungle with fury. Amid the chaos, a terrified tiger cub clung to a crumbling ledge beside a swelling river. The water below churned violently, licking closer with every second. The cub, no more than 8 months old, let out a shrill cry that echoed through the storm. In a nearby village, screams erupted as locals spotted the creature from a distance. An old woman cried, "The baby tiger! He's slipping!" Phones were raised, calls were made, frantic, desperate. Mud slid down the cliffs, trees bent under the weight of the wind. Somewhere far off, a siren wailed. The cub, soaked and shivering, pressed itself tighter against the earth, eyes wide, searching for its mother. But she was nowhere. Only the cruel storm answered. The scene was apocalyptic. Nature had turned feral. And in the middle of it all, one trembling life on the edge. The rescue had not even begun, and already hearts had been claimed. At a wildlife rescue center miles away, the atmosphere was tense. Phones rang non-stop. But a soaked forest officer burst through the door shouting, "Cub! Flooded ridge! Urgent!" Mira, 29, the team's lead rescuer, jumped from her desk. She was tall, South Asian, with a tightly braided ponytail and fierce amber eyes. "Pack now," she ordered. Around her, medics, drivers and handlers moved in a choreographed frenzy. Boots thudded on wooden floors. Rain gear, tranquilizers, first aid kits, all loaded with precision. Mira's breath was steady, but her heart was not. "Please hold on, little one," she whispered. The walls of the center shook as another thunderclap rattled the valley. A map of the jungle lay on the table, soaked from drops dripping off their jackets. The marked zone was remote, dangerous, and nearly unreachable in this weather. But turning back was not an option. Mira zipped her vest tight and stepped into the storm. Mira climbed into the back of the jeep, already drenched. The team's convoy rattled down the hillside as thunder cracked above. Each jolt of the vehicle sent adrenaline through her spine. "We'll never make it through that pass," the driver shouted over the rain. "We'll make it," Mira replied, voice sharp as flint. The forest road had become a river of its own, mud sloshing beneath tires, trees bending dangerously close. Inside the vehicle, silence pulsed between breaths. A younger rescuer clutched a waterproof case. "Is the cub still alive?" he asked. "He has to be," Mira said, her fingers tightening around a harness strap. Outside, the headlights caught the shimmer of water racing across the ground. Nature was collapsing into chaos, but Mira's focus burned brighter than the lightning. The convoy screeched to a halt at a point where the road was completely washed away. A 30-foot gap yawned between them and the other side of the jungle ridge. Mira leapt out into the rain, mud splashing up her legs. "We go on foot," she shouted. No one hesitated. Ropes were pulled, gear slung over shoulders. The storm howled louder, as if daring them forward. The team descended into slippery terrain, hacking through vines, slipping, grunting. Trees leaned like giants in agony. The jungle wasn't just alive, it was enraged. Every step was a gamble. "Faster," Mira barked, her voice nearly drowned. Lightning revealed a path, narrow, half eroded. No choice. They pushed on, soaked to the bone, lungs burning. Somewhere ahead, a cub fought alone. And they would reach him, or be swallowed by the same storm. Lightning burst through the sky, illuminating the ledge where the cub lay. Mira spotted him, tiny, trembling, ears pinned flat. "There!" she pointed, heart slamming against her ribs. They were close, just across the gulch. But the ridge was eroding by the second. The cub gave another cry, weak, desperate. "Don't move," Mira whispered, even though he couldn't hear. Her team formed a plan instantly. Anchor points, ropes, descent gear. Time was bleeding away like water through fingers. A rock broke off and tumbled into the river below. The cub flinched. "We have minutes," someone said. Mira crouched, staring at the tiny form across the divide. "Hang on, little one," she murmured. Then she clipped in and stepped toward the edge. The battle had truly begun. Long before the sirens and flood alerts, Mira had roamed these forests barefoot. Her father, a forest ranger, had taught her to read the sounds of trees and the warnings in the air. Now, soaked to the skin, she moved with the same instinct. "Stay with me," she called to the team. The jungle moaned around them as branches snapped and thunder echoed. Her boots sank deeper with every step, but she didn't falter. A flash of memory burned through her. A young tiger she'd once rescued named Amal. He died in her arms from poacher wounds, and she'd sworn then never to let another creature suffer alone. The cub ahead wasn't just an animal, he was a chance at redemption. "You don't get to die here," Mira whispered to herself. Behind her, the team pushed forward. Somewhere in that storm, purpose roared louder than the thunder. This wasn't just a mission. It was a vow. Meanwhile, the mother tiger paced at the jungle's edge. She was massive, 7 feet of raw muscle and maternal rage. Her amber eyes glowed in the storm as she searched the darkness. Rain streamed down her striped coat, but she did not flinch. She sniffed the air, then let out a low, throaty growl that echoed through the trees. Her cub's scent lingered faintly, panicked, wet, afraid. She moved forward, claws sinking into the softened ground, but stopped near a landslide zone. Her instincts warned her. A mother's agony and animal intuition clashed. Should she risk the mudslide or wait? The storm cracked again above her, but her gaze remained fixed on the distant ridge. Somewhere she sensed hope, flickering like a dying flame. And she would guard it, even from afar, with every breath she had. At base command, tension thickened like the jungle mist. A satellite feed blinked on screen, an overhead thermal image barely showing the cub's heat signature. "He's still alive," a technician confirmed. Gasps followed. An older wildlife coordinator, Colonel Sean, grunted. "That ridge won't hold long," he muttered. His graying beard dripped rainwater as he scanned the monitors. A younger officer approached, voice shaking. "Do we send backup?" Sean hesitated. "Too dangerous. It's Mira's call now." Radios crackled with static. The storm played a cruel game, cutting off signals, delaying updates. But Sean knew Mira. She was born for this kind of madness. "She'll find a way," he said, more to himself than anyone. Behind him, another map was pinned, this one marked in red, poaching activity. There were more threats in that jungle than just water. And they were closing in. The cub curled tighter into himself. His body trembled, ribs visibly rising and falling with each shaky breath. Water lapped at the edge, closer now. His eyes darted, searching for the comforting presence of his mother, but only darkness stared back. He let out a soft, broken chirp. Just then, a movement in the trees startled him. A shadow passed, slow, silent. Not human. Not rescue. Not rescue. Yellow eyes flashed. A predator. A rogue leopard, drawn by the scent of weakness, crouched silently above. The cub sensed it, ears flattening further. Instinct told him to run, but there was nowhere to go. Just the ledge. The water. And now, another danger watching. The leopard stayed still, hidden, eyes locked. It didn't pounce. Not yet. But time was unraveling fast. The jungle had no rules, only hunger. And mercy wasn't part of the food chain. Mira stopped abruptly. Through the trees, the cub came into view, barely 100 feet away, curled, shaking. Relief surged through her like lightning. Visual on the cub, she radioed. No response. Static. She waved her team into a halt. Gear down. No loud moves. Her eyes caught movement in the trees above the cub. She squinted. Something else was watching. Mira's gut twisted. "We're not alone," she whispered. With precision, she loaded her tranquilizer dart and raised it toward the canopy. But the shadow was already gone. "Focus on the cub," she said firmly. Get the lines ready. They didn't have time for ghosts in the trees. The storm would sweep everything away soon. And if they didn't act now, they'd lose him, to the river or to the predator still watching. This rescue just got a lot more dangerous. Rain poured relentlessly as Mira and her team inched closer to the ridge. Anchor lines now, she barked. 2 team members scrambled to drive stakes into the slippery ground. Time was running out. I'll go first, Mira said. One of the medics protested. You're led, let me. No, Mira cut him off, fierce. That cub needs someone steady. She clipped into the rope, rain streaking down her face, and leaned into the drop. Her foot hit rock. Slipped. Caught again. 1 meter at a time, she murmured, lowering herself toward the ledge. Above, the wind howled like a wounded animal. Below, the cub's whimpers grew louder, more frantic. Each second felt like an hour. The ridge groaned. Come on, she whispered to both herself and the cub. She was so close now, just a few feet from his terrified gaze. But something felt wrong. The jungle held its breath. Suddenly a deafening crack rang out. The ridge shifted. A section of the cliff above Mira crumbled, sending rocks tumbling. Rock! Someone screamed. Mira flattened herself against the stone, holding her breath as debris thundered past. Mud splashed across her shoulders. The rope jerked but held. Her hands trembled slightly. Status, came a faint voice over the radio. She clicked back, voice tight, still here. Going. Below, the cub had flattened its ears, crouching lower. The ledge was narrower than she feared. Too narrow for both of them. She'd have to improvise. New plan, she murmured. I'll secure him, and we go together. Overhead, another chunk of earth gave way, disappearing into the river with a terrible splash. Mira didn't flinch. She moved faster. Every second was a gamble. But there was no room for fear. Only action. Back at command, signals started dropping. We're losing visual, a tech yelled. Colonel Sean swore under his breath. Boost the signal. Use tower relay. The screen flickered, one last frame of Mira descending, then static. The room tensed. Do we send backup now? Someone asked. No one can cross that ridge. This is Mira's op. Sean slammed his fist on the table. She trained for this, but if she doesn't check in 10, deploy air rescue. The team watched helplessly as rain pounded the tin roof, drowning out thoughts. Sean stared at the red marks on the jungle map again. One moved. Slow, deliberate. A tracker pinged unexpectedly. What is that? He muttered. Another heat source? Another tech leaned in, confused. Not ours. The room fell silent. Somewhere in that storm, a new threat moved through the dark. Mira finally reached the ledge. It was barely wide enough to kneel. The cub whimpered but didn't move, too exhausted. Easy now, Mira murmured, reaching slowly into her pouch. She pulled out a tranquilizer microdose and a wrapped thermal sling. You're okay. I've got you. The cub hissed weakly but made no attempt to run. As she secured the tranquilizer dart into his flank, the cub flinched once, then stilled. Good boy, she whispered. The rain masked every sound except their breaths. She wrapped the sling around his tiny frame, locking it tight against her chest harness. A small alarm blinked red, rope tension limit nearing. We're too heavy, she muttered. Then we fly. Overhead the ridge shifted again. Pull us up, she shouted into the comms. Say, dish, doll, me. Then, copy, lifting now. The rope tightened. They began their ascent into a sky lit with lightning. Halfway up the ridge, the rope jerked hard. Mira swung violently into the cliff wall, shielding the cub. Rope tension critical, someone yelled. The storm's fury had worsened. Winds howled like banshees. Trees above bent dangerously. One anchor point slipped 2 inches in the mud. Stabilize it now, a rescuer screamed. The jeep's engine strained as its winch tried to hold them both. Mira clung to the cub, blood trickling from a cut on her cheek. "Don't drop," she whispered, both to herself and the team. Suddenly, a faint growl echoed below. Not from the cub. From the forest. A shape moved along the lower ridge, eyes glowing. "There's something watching us," someone muttered. They had to get clear. Now. "Final pull, go." The winch roared. Cub stirred faintly. And the jungle waited, breath held, to see if life would win. The rescue line held, barely. Mira and the cub reached the ridge's edge as lightning lit up the valley in a blinding flash. Hands reached down and pulled them to safety. Mira collapsed onto the wet ground, gasping. The cub whimpered in her arms. For one brief second, the team allowed themselves a flicker of relief. Then a shout, "What's that?" A flashlight swung across the jungle trail, illuminating a thin metallic wire strung between two trees. A snare. Mira's eyes widened. "That's not for wild boars," she said. They moved closer, finding more traps covered with mud, camouflaged. Fresh. "These were set today," a handler muttered. Someone knew this storm would flush animals out. Mira looked at the cub, then at the trees. "This wasn't just a rescue," she said coldly. "It was a setup." The jungle had more than weather, trying to kill. The team fanned out, discovering more snares, some bloody, others broken. "There was a whole line of these," a rescuer said, voice trembling. A darker realization settled in. "Someone's been hunting here recently." Mira crouched near a half-covered pit trap, its wooden spikes slick with mud. "These are pro setups," she muttered. Then she froze. A fresh boot print beside the pit. Deep. Deliberate. Not from her team. Whoever did this is nearby. She stood, scanning the trees. Her hand moved instinctively to the tranquilizer gun slung at her side. "We're not alone," she said. The team grouped tighter. The cub squirmed in her arms. Mira soothed him, whispering, "You weren't just lost, you were bait." Thunder cracked. Somewhere in the jungle, twigs snapped. Eyes watched. The real danger had only begun. Back at command, Sean received the update. His jaw tightened. "Activate anti-poaching protocol. No delays." The room shifted gears instantly. Emergency radios buzzed, maps were updated, and a new threat level was declared. "They're not just hunting," Sean growled. "They're using storms to cover their tracks." He pulled open a drawer, revealing a confiscated map labeled in code, a poacher network's blueprint. "I thought we cleared this zone last season," a junior officer said. "We did," Sean replied grimly. "They're back." A red light blinked, a silent alarm triggered deep in the reserve. "They're watching us," Sean said. "They know we're here." Outside the center, headlights cut through the rain, reinforcements arriving. Too late to stop the setup. But maybe not too late to catch the ghosts who laid the trap. Mira moved swiftly now. The cub was secure, but the trail was no longer safe. "Head for the backup route," she ordered. Her voice cut through the storm. They rerouted down a narrower trail lined with thick ferns and sharp turns. Behind them, faint figures moved between trees, too far to identify, but fast. "We're being followed," a handler whispered. Mira didn't look back. "Don't stop. No lights." The jungle was alive with the wrong sounds. Branches breaking, leaves rustling unnaturally. At one sharp bend, they found something chilling. A fresh carcass of a jungle deer, throat slit, left in the open. "It's a message," someone whispered. Mira stared at the blood-soaked ground. "No, it's a warning." And still, the eyes followed. Somewhere in the trees, poachers watched. And waited. As dawn began to bleed into the stormy night, Mira and her team reached a clearing near the rescue rendezvous point. The rain had eased slightly, but nerves were frayed. They formed a defensive circle as the sound of movement grew closer. Not animals, boots. Human. 1. Mira raised her tranq gun. The cub stirred restlessly in her sling. Then, a flashlight beam flickered behind a tree. Silence. Then another light, this one from an official rescue jeep cresting the hill. "Team 7!" a voice called out. Relief washed over them. But Mira didn't lower her weapon. She stepped forward, scanning the tree line. "They're still out there," she whispered. Her eyes narrowed. "And they'll come back." Behind her, the cub nuzzled closer. Alive. Safe, for now. But this rescue had revealed a deeper wall, and Mira had no intention of backing down. Rain returned with a vengeance. The rendezvous point became a blur of mud and flashing lights. The rescue team had barely a moment to breathe before the emergency radio screamed again. "Another cub?" Mira asked. "No," the voice replied. "A poacher's sighting, armed, near your perimeter." The team spun into motion. "Secure the cub," Mira barked. She handed the bundle off to the medic and drew her tranq gun. "We're done running." Wind ripped through the clearing. The jungle ahead whispered of hidden movement. Mira moved silently, each step deliberate. Behind her, 2 guards flanked her, tense. A flash, metal glinting behind leaves. A shadow bolted. "There!" Mira shouted. She sprinted, crashing through brush. Adrenaline replaced fear. For the first time tonight, she was the hunter. And nothing would stop her now. Through thorns and shadows, Mira chased the figure deeper into the jungle. Her boots pounded soaked ground, vines whipping her face. The figure darted left. Fast, agile. But Mira was relentless. She ducked under branches, ignored the cuts. She heard heavy breaths up ahead. Another turn, mud slicked beneath her, and suddenly she was face to face with him. Mid-30s, lean, soaked in black gear, a rifle slung across his shoulder. They froze. The moment fractured time. "Drop it!" Mira roared. He hesitated, then raised the gun. Without blinking, Mira fired. The tranquilizer dot hit him square in the chest. He staggered, tried to speak, then collapsed into the mud. Mira stood over him, chest heaving. "You don't get to take what we protect," she whispered before turning back toward the clearing. Back at the clearing, the cub stirred in the medice's arms. A soft whimper escaped his throat, weak but alive. The young medic, heart pounding, whispered, "He's stabilizing." Mira returned, soaked and streaked with mud and blood. "Poachers down," she reported. "Keep eyes open. There may be more." Just then, headlights beamed through the rain. Officials from forest patrols had arrived. Uniformed rangers disembarked quickly, guns ready, faces tense. "Heard your call," one said. "We're sweeping the perimeter now." Mira nodded. "The traps go all the way to the western creek. Lock it down." The patrol vanished into the woods. The team exhaled. Finally, the worst seemed over. But the cub gave a sudden cry, louder this time. Mira rushed over, dropping to her knees. "It's okay," she whispered, cradling his head. "You made it." But the fight had changed her forever. Hours passed. The rain eased into a misty drizzle, as the cub was transferred into a protective crate lined with blankets and warmth packs. The team worked in silence, faces hollowed from adrenaline and exhaustion. Mira watched every movement. She didn't speak, but her eyes burned with something new, purpose mixed with fury. A ranger approached her with a clipboard. "I'll go to the rehab center," he said. "The mother?" Mira asked. "Tractor prints." She circled the ridge, probably retreated for safety. Mira nodded. She waited. She knew. She reached through the bars of the crate, gently touching the cub's paw. "You're not bait anymore," she whispered. "You're the reason we fight." The cub blinked slowly, a small purr in his throat. A single shaft of sunlight broke through the canopy. For the first time, it felt like hope. Before leaving the jungle, Mira walked back to the ledge, the very edge where it all began. The river below had calmed, but the scars in the earth remained. She stood silent, letting the wind tug at her soaked hair, eyes closed. Behind her, the team prepared the final loadout. Sean's voice crackled on the radio. "Well done, Mira. Proud of you." She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her jacket and pulled out an old pendant, Aman's tag, the tiger she lost long ago. She hung it on a branch beside the cliff. "We did it," she whispered to the wind. "He lived." Then she turned. With the jungle behind her and the cubs safe ahead, she walked toward the waiting jeep. Each step heavy with memory, but lighter than before. The battle had been won. But the war to protect? Just beginning. 2 days later, the cub lay under soft lamplight in the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. Clean, dry, and gently bandaged, he blinked slowly from within his insulated enclosure. Monitors tracked his vitals and a soft mechanical hum filled the sterile space. Mira stood beside the glass, arms folded. "Temperature's normalizing," a vet whispered. "He's eating again." Mira's lips twitched. Not a smile, but close. "He fought hard," she said. "Most wouldn't have made it." The cub stretched slightly, letting out a soft purr that rippled with relief. Mira touched the glass gently, her reflection overlaying his small frame. "He's not just healing," she said. "He's rewriting his story." Behind her, the vet scribbled notes. But Mira remained still, soaking in the quiet miracle before her. The storm was over. But something stronger remained: resilience. Outside the center, news cameras rolled. Mira stood in front of a hastily arranged pressboard, microphones pointed at her face. Flashbulbs popped. A reporter asked, "Was the cub lured intentionally?" Mira's voice was firm. "Yes. Poachers exploited the storm to force movement. It wasn't chance, it was cruelty." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Another voice asked, "What's next?" Mira didn't blink. "We track every trap zone, we press charges, and we protect what can't speak for itself." Behind her, an image of the cub, alive, alert, was projected on a screen. The crowd hushed. Something changed in that moment. The cub wasn't just an animal anymore. He was a symbol of survival, of resistance. And Mira, standing tall, had become his shield. The flashbulbs popped again, but now they felt like applause. Elsewhere in the forest, the mother tiger emerged from the undergrowth. Her wounds were shallow, her stride cautious. Rangers had been tracking her, but only at a respectful distance. Now, she paused at a river's edge, the same one that nearly took her cub. She sniffed the air. It was faint, but she knew. Her cub had lived. She released a soft growl, almost a sigh. No longer frantic, just alert. Then, slowly, she lay down beneath a tree, eyes scanning the brush. Somewhere, her bloodline had survived. That was enough. For now. The forest seemed to exhale with her. A bird called from the canopy. The sun broke through the last of the clouds. The mother tiger blinked slowly and remained still. Finally, at peace. Not everything had to end in loss. That evening, Mira sat alone at her desk inside the center. Files stacked high, news articles scattered above. Headlines blaring: "Rescuer stops wildlife trap operation. Cub saved in heroic storm mission." But her gaze wasn't on the headlines. It was on a faded photo pinned above her desk. Young Mira, age 15, holding a tiger cub in her arms. Aman. Lost years ago. Her fingers brushed the image. "We're finally turning the tide," she whispered. Her phone buzzed. A message from Sean, poaching intel confirmed. Full sweep authorized. Mira exhaled slowly. "Let's end this," she murmured. She stood, grabbed her raincoat and paused. On the wall beside her a fresh image had been pinned. The cub, eyes open, looking directly at the lens. A new generation. A new fight. She was ready. That night, cameras captured a final image, security footage from the cub's enclosure. He stood, shaky but upright, and took 3 cautious steps across the bedding. He paused, sniffed the air, and gave a soft growl. Not fear, but recognition. The footage was silent, but something about that moment echoed loudly. Strength. Phew. Hope. No. A start. Later, Mira reviewed the clip alone. No reporters, no crowds. Just her and the screen. She leaned forward, eyes moist. "That's it," she whispered. That's the moment. Outside, the forest was quiet. The storm had long passed. The battle had been brutal. But the smallest sound, the soft shuffle of a cub's first steps, was the loudest victory of all. Camera kept rolling, but Mira didn't move. The story wasn't over. But the healing had begun. Weeks passed. The monsoon subsided, and the jungle breathed again. At the wildlife center, the cub had grown. Stronger, steadier, braver. Mira stood outside his enclosure, watching silently. No words. Just observation. The cub paced slowly, curious, no longer clinging to corners. He sniffed the air, ears twitching toward birdsong. His muscles had definition now, his eyes sharper. "He's almost ready," a vet said quietly. Mira nodded but said nothing. A breeze carried the scent of damp earth and wild blossoms. The cub suddenly turned, staring directly at Mira. They locked eyes. Something passed between them. Not fear. Not need. Recognition. A silent thank you, perhaps. Or maybe a promise. Then he padded away, disappearing into the bamboo at the far end of the enclosure. Mira exhaled, the weight of weeks dissolving into breath. He wasn't just surviving. He was becoming. Later that day, Mira joined a team briefing. Maps were spread out. Red pins marked poaching trails. "We've identified 2 networks operating under cover of storm cycles," said Sean. The cub was part of a larger pattern. Mira traced the paths with her finger. "Then we stop the next one before it starts." Plans formed quickly. Patrol shifts, drone coverage, hidden camera grids. "We're done playing defense," Mira added. "We turned the jungle into a shield." Faces around her hardened with agreement. This wasn't about one rescue anymore. It was a movement. A shift. The jungle would no longer be a hunting ground. It would be a battleground for protection. As the meeting ended, Mira stood at the edge of the map and said, "He lived because we were ready. Let's be ready for all the others." And no one questioned her command. The cub had been named officially, Veer, meaning brave. The plaque on his enclosure bore the name in bold letters. Visitors now stopped in awe, hearing his story whispered like legend. Children pressed faces against the glass. "That's the one they saved in the flood," a girl gasped. But Veer no longer cowered at attention. He stood tall, regal even at his young age. And yet, behind the strength was a silent truth. He had earned none of this. He had merely survived. It was the humans who chose to fight. And that choice had changed everything. One ranger said, "He doesn't just symbolize survival. He's what happens when we choose compassion over profit." A quiet ripple of respect passed through every corridor. The cub had become more than a victim. He was a message carved into the heart of a nation. That evening, as dusk turned the sky to violet, Mira walked the perimeter trail alone. Fireflies blinked lazily in the grass. In the distance, jungle drums from a village festival echoed. But her path took her behind the center, to a grove where past rescues were memorialized. Zone markers. Names. Aman's was there. She stopped beside it, kneeling. "He made it," she said softly. "One finally made it." Her hand rested on the engraved name. "I still carry you. But now, I carry him too." The grove rustled in quiet reply. A soft wind lifted her braid. Peace found her in that moment, not because the work was done, but because something good had finally held. She stood, dusted her hands and smiled, just once. Brief, real. Then she turned back toward the lighted path, where duty still waited. She did not walk, she strode. The final shot. Veer alone under moonlight, standing near the center of his habitat. He looked up, not at a fence but at the sky. A soft breeze ruffled his fur. He blinked once, then stepped forward into the open. The camera slowly pulled back, past the enclosure, above the trees, into the stars. No narration. No music. Just the quiet sound of crickets, wind, and one small heartbeat echoing into the wild. The screen faded to black. A final message appeared in white text: every rescued life is a revolution. Protect the voiceless, defend the wild. Then, silence. The story was over, but the mission remained. In the darkness, only one image lingered: a brave cub staring into a future shaped by those who chose to care.